All right, everybody, welcome to your newest Notre Dame centered podcast and radio show. This is Irish Rewind. I'm Dalton Tinklenberg, joined by George Bashara. George, how are you today?
Doing great, sir. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. On today's show, we're going to be running through, first of all, some Super Bowl news that revolves around Notre Dame, hopping right into women's basketball, carrying over to some of the hockey news from the university, men's basketball, and then we're going to wrap up with a little bit on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish football team. Real quick before we get started, just wanted to give a huge nod of appreciation and congratulations to John Sullivan, a former Notre Dame offensive lineman, who's going to be playing with the Los Angeles Rams later on this afternoon in the Super Bowl. Obviously, we're recording this a little bit before it actually airs. So congratulations, John. Go out there and make Notre Dame proud. Getting started here, George, women's basketball, what's the news?
Well, what a day today. Earlier on Sunday, we covered the Notre Dame versus Georgia Tech game, and let me tell you, it's tough to be a team coming up against the Irish when they've had a loss in the recent days. It's very difficult for a team to take a punishing, and Georgia Tech felt a little bit of that today. The Irish really took it to them in the first half. Amazing that the Irish, their 10 points, only 10 points did the Irish allow the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets to score in that first quarter. They played some pretty tough defense there, in which those defensive points turned definitely into offensive points at the other end of the court. The Irish they were just tough. I've seen them punish some competitors. They really took it to Georgia Tech.
I don't know that I ever remember watching a basketball game where one team scores 13 points in the entire first half of the game.
I will second that. That was pretty crazy. I've been to a few more of those games where teams had trouble in scoring. I've never seen a team not score. I've seen a team score more than 3 points in a quarter, but I've never seen the Irish shut down a team to just 3 points in any specific quarter. And that quarter that we're referring to was the second. The Irish had a 26-3 point advantage in the entire second quarter. That number is just unheard of in women's basketball. It's tough to be in that dogfight.
Well, and George, Coach McGraw said it best right after the game. We were both there in the press conference, and one of the reporters asked her, can you harness that? She said, yeah, we played pretty well, but they did have 9 offensive boards. That's just the kind of fire this team plays with, and it's really going to suit them well come tournament time.
And like we've talked, I think that loss earlier in the week to the Tar Heels was really good for this team. They always say there's no loss that's a good loss, but I think when you look at from where a team needs to go, that loss is like pressing the reset button on any electronic device that you have. It's stuck. And sometimes you need that wake-up call, and it's better to get a loss in late January than it is to get that loss during tournament time. So if there's a point to get a loss, it's get the loss now. That's for darn sure.
Absolutely. And, going back to that Tar Heels loss, we can't really understate the value of Jackie Young. It was something alluded to in the post-game press conferences today. I think if I remember right, on the box score, she had a plus-minus of plus 45. I mean, that's just insane.
Let's see. The Jackie Young had a plus-minus of 45. She's just amazing. We're talking about the junior out of Princeton, Indiana. Jackie Young, it seems that, everyone talks about Marina Mabry. They talk about Jessica Shepard, and we all know that everyone talks about Enrique. But the true glue of this team, I believe, is Jackie Young. She's definitely, as I call her, the silent assassin. You think that you got her covered, but she's going to fight and she's going to get her points. And she makes it happen.
We have 6 games left, and I think 3 of them are against ranked opponents with Florida State, NC State, and Syracuse, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and the team as Coach alluded to, this team has not peaked. She says that they're still working on getting to that. I'll call it the masterpiece. That's the word that she used today in the press on Sunday in the press conference, is a masterpiece.
Do you see any of these final 6 opponents really giving them a big scare? I mean, obviously NC State's ranked in the top 10 in the country currently, so that's a big matchup for Notre Dame. I think in the second half of Sunday's game, of today's game, we really saw, one of Notre Dame's weaknesses where they got a big lead and they kind of backed off a little bit. And there was a point, in my opinion, in that second half where Georgia Tech kind of made a run. Now, given they were still down by 30-some points, but you kind of feel a little bit of a momentum swing, which is weird to say about a 30-point gap.
Yeah.
Do you see them having any trouble with these final 6 opponents?
Well, I'm going to use a football analogy, okay? And the analogy comes from the great coach, Ara Parsegian. Every team comes in Notre Dame, and they play it like it's their Super Bowl, okay? So you got to have your players prepared because you got a target on your back, and the teams are gunning to win. So whether they're playing at home or on the road, Notre Dame always has the target on their back, and you can't take any game for granted. And you can have trouble with any of these remaining teams. Any of these remaining teams can give you trouble if you take a different stance that you're playing every game to win.
Well, I tell you right now, just based on what we saw Sunday, if this team can run the table these last 6 games and get through the conference tournament there at the end of the season, they're going to be dangerous come NCAA tournament time, undoubtedly.
It's all about staying healthy, though. It's as folks need to understand that Notre Dame is kind of playing with the short bench. The Georgia Tech was playing with a 3-man advantage. That means that they're playing with three more players that Notre Dame cannot rotate in and out. So the Irish got to stay healthy, because any one of those key players that are the starters or the top 5 go down, this team's definitely gonna have to go into heavy defense mode to protect their opportunity to go for a repeat this year.
Well, moving on from women's basketball, let's cool things down a little bit and move to the hockey side of things. George, I know you're just about at every home hockey game, correct?
Yep, that's correct. I have a press credential for there as well, and I cover the Friday. They call it the home and home. They play 2 games at home every now and then on the weekend. So between the Purcell Pavilion and the Compton Family Ice Arena, when football's not in town, I'm in one of those 2 buildings.
Well, what's the latest news out of the Compton Family Ice Arena? Because obviously the last 2 games, given they were on the road, but Notre Dame dropped both of those. Do we see any chance of them picking things up here against Michigan?
I think that they can. The next home game is actually home against Michigan, and that's on the 12th. And that's going to be it's a tough game, because Notre Dame's currently ranked number 3 in the Big Ten standings, and every game is a playoff game, as Coach Jackson said a couple weeks ago. So they're playing right now to solidify their opportunity to at least get a home game during the Big Ten Conference Series, Championship Series. Right now, they're sitting 2 points. They're sitting 1 point outside. Let's see. I'm sorry. They're just sitting outside of Minnesota. So they're going to need to get some more wins in order to secure at least that second seed, because Ohio State is definitely in cruise control with their standings in the Big Ten.
So, George, break it down for me in terms of somebody who really isn't familiar with the hockey team as much. What's the difference between last year's dominant team and this year's team that's kind of right there on the cusp?
The difference is age. This year, this is a very young team. And once again, it's a quote right from Coach Jackson. This team is very young. And as a matter of fact, they have a starting line of that they've been using a lot lately due to injuries. Graham Slager is a freshman, Jake Pavanka, freshman, and Alex Steves, freshman. You have an all freshman line that you're starting a game with, and you're putting them out there against seniors from all these different schools. So there's definitely an age difference. This is a very young team compared to some of these teams they've been playing against.
So really, in the grand scheme of things, is what I'm hearing from you is this is a very promising young team.
I still say the future is very bright. And for Notre Dame to be sitting there at number 3 in the Big Ten standings, that's you can't ask for more than from a young team than you have right now. They've gone out and played with heart, and they are definitely these freshmen are definitely hungry to win. people typically see the wins and the losses, but in our business, you break down the numbers, right? The numbers aren't bad. The numbers aren't bad at all. It's that you got to look at what you're working with, and you can only try and put the best team out there when you're dealt these circumstances.
Well, and we're going to get
who thought Rex Pfluger was going down with an injury that was going to cost him the season?
We're going to get big measuring sticks before this month's over, too, George. They play Virginia and Virginia Tech both again for the second time. I don't think either one of those games were wildly close the first time they played. So let's give them some credit and see where they finish in these two games and see if they, possibly can't steal a win or two.
Well, coming off that win the other day against Boston College, it does help the confidence. And by the way, none of this is possible without John Mooney. The guy's crazy. 8 double-doubles in a row. The record is 11, by the way. So he's moving up there in those standings. But it's the 14th double-double this season. And he's a junior. So Mooney is stepping up himself.
Well, and the sheer fact that they even were remotely within 20 points, 22 points, final score of Duke, and to me, that's impressive. It's hard to say any, 20-point loss is impressive, but Duke, you're talking an NBA caliber team, in my opinion. Zion Williamson, some of those guys that Coach K has are just ridiculous. I don't know how he managed to get, a lineup like he has at Duke.
Well, as with Notre Dame when it comes to football, right, and Notre Dame women's basketball, it's all about the name of the program, right?
Absolutely.
The program, they've got the championships, they got the mystique, they have their coach. And, sometimes those are the elements. And in these cases, I don't think that Mike Bray's doing a bad job. You're talking 2 seasons in a row where he's had to deal with a team that's had people leave the team, injuries that have popped up. You can't prepare young guys for that. And it comes over time. So to me, I think you got to let these guys play the games and let them play their hearts out because they're trying their best, and the numbers show that. It's just a matter of coming against the buzzsaw of some of these bigger programs in the ACC.
Well, like I said, these, much like the other two teams we've talked about, this tail end of the season is going to be very telling for where the program is heading, going into next year. I don't think that they're going to obviously they'll make the conference tournament, but I don't think they're going to make any kind of postseason beyond that. Would you disagree there?
No, and I think it's okay. I truly believe that it is what it is. I'm not Coach Bray. I can't personally make them play better. I'm going to leave that one to the big guy.
So I guess after that, we finally moved to our draw, which is kind of my forte here in Notre Dame football. Obviously, for those of you listening, George and I both are credentialed for Notre Dame football, as we are for many other sports there at the university. I recently had the opportunity to go down and cover the Senior Bowl, which was a mixture of Tranquil Coney and one of my favorite running backs in the country, Dexter Williams. I got to be honest with you, George. Drew Tranquil really stood out down there. I was very, very impressed by Drew.
You know what they say? The quiet ones are the ones you got to watch out for.
Well, that was 100% accurate. He won the practice player of the week at his position. So obviously the scouts and coaches and whoever was involved there was impressed. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he actually won the defensive player of the game or the linebacker of the game for the actual game. A lot of people thought that he was going to be drafted after Coney. And from what I've heard from people who know far more than I do, the projections have now shifted, and they think Tranquil will be drafted higher than Coney. And, he has a really special skill set. Obviously, for those who don't know, he came into the university as a safety, and then eventually transitioned into the linebacker role. So it's not like he can't provide coverage in the passing game. He's really unique in that sense, and I think that's what's going to be the draw for a lot of teams that look at taking him and that put him high on their draft boards.
And the interesting part, you mentioned some key words there, and I don't want to derail your subject, but you bring something great up there. It's almost similar to the Asa Turner loss, right? He plays at safety, and they were asking him to come in at linebacker, and ultimately he doesn't sign with the Irish because he wants to keep it safety. So Drew Tranquill, let me tell you, special guy.
Well, speaking of commits, and not to get too far away because I want to touch on
Yep.
Dexter Williams here in just a second, but as far as linebacker, I know that I'm pretty known for Notre Dame coverage and some coverage of the pros, but I do dabble in high school coverage from time to time, and I had the opportunity several times over the last 2 years to cover Jack Kaiser from Pioneer High School in Royal Center, Indiana. And for those of you who don't know the name Jack Kaiser, you very soon will. Indiana Mr. Football this year, a lot of uproar over that, giving the award to a kid from a single A school. But I can promise you there was nobody more deserving than Kaiser. This kid played quarterback for his team. He played linebacker on the defensive side, obviously. And, I think without Kaiser, it's a completely different story. I think it's been 3 years now since Pioneer lost a game, and the game they lost was in the state finals. They were back-to-back state champions, undefeated, his juniors and senior seasons. So very excited to see him at Notre Dame. The Turner loss it hurts right now, but just know that that Kaiser should be a big name for Notre Dame in the next 4 years, 3 or 4 years. Getting back to the Senior Bowl, like I said, I want to touch on Dexter Williams a little bit. Didn't really make any huge plays in the game outside of a 39-yard run. But, just like Tranquill, Williams seems to really have impressed a lot of the scouts in attendance. He was also given the Practice Player of the Week award at the running back position, which is pretty cool. Now, he did drop 2 passes in the game that I saw personally, which is a big deal because I know he wanted to prove to those watching that he had reliable hands. Watching Notre Dame, I think that he is a viable option out of the backfield in the passing game. But that's something we'll have to, kind of watch as the process goes and see if we're right there. I think as of right now, I would put Williams probably in my top 5 to 6 running backs in this class. I have Darrell Henderson from Memphis as number 1. If you haven't seen him on tape or haven't had a chance to watch him, check him out. Pretty remarkable kid. As far as some of the other Notre Dame guys going into the draft, I have Julian Love, number 2 on my big board. I think he's overlooked quite a bit. You look at the Cotton Bowl, George, you and I were both there, and that game is fairly close until Love goes out with an injury, and then things just kind of come unhinged. So I think that Love had a huge impact on the Irish this year, and, I'm excited to see where he goes in the NFL and what kind of impact he has at the next level.
Yeah, it would have been nice for him to stay one more year, but you know what? You got to do what you got to do. And if the news coming from the folks around you that you have an opportunity, I think you got to take it. The important part is he's graduating with a degree.
Well, and speaking of leaving early, I see why Love did it. I think he's going to go fairly high in the draft. I have him round 1. Some people say round 2, but still, that's pretty comfortable there in that range. Someone who I do maybe think made a mistake was Miles Boykin. From what I've heard, he may be in danger of going undrafted. People are worried about his athleticism and speed. Obviously he's a big guy, very physical. But that's a definite concern at the next level. You can't really body cornerbacks like you do in college. You have to be able to break away and separate from them. And that's something that scouts are worried about with Boykin. So we'll see if he made the right choice or, if he later regrets not coming back for his last year.
It's one of those life lessons. You have to make a decision. I respect each one of those guys for the decisions that they made. And all you can do is wish them the best.
Well,
because right now it's on to team 131.
Well, one final player that we'll mention that left and kind of lead into our next and I think final topic was obviously Brandon Wimbush. He's going to UCF. Any thoughts on that move?
You know what? All the best for him. the team. It's a team that needed a quarterback. He's obviously going to get the opportunity to start. UCF has been. They play an interesting conference. I'm not going to downgrade any conference in college football. They play a very tough conference in the way of the competition that they have against them week to week. So it's going to give him another chance to develop. It's going to give him some more time to play. And I think it's going to work out for everybody. It'll be interesting seeing him go up against some of these other teams, and maybe he can do something special.
Well, we at Sports Media Pass have a dedicated team of guys that are based in Orlando and cover UCF. And when the news broke, I texted Kyle Nash, is his name, our UCF guy down there. And I said, hey, you guys are getting Wimbush. And his first reaction was, what? He doesn't really fit the system. But after, he kind of looked into some of his tape and, did more of a deep dive on him, I think he's really excited about Wimbush. And to be honest with you, George, I think Wimbush is going to have a big impact at UCF. And I think if any college in the country gives him the chance to kind of make it to the next level at quarterback, I think it's UCF, because just looking at their offense and watching what they do, I think it gives him a chance to showcase, his skills and what he's good at.
I think he's got opportunities. He's got to be, as things that he saw when he played here for Notre Dame. One, he has to be able to commit to whether he's going to run or if he's going to take the slide. That was one of the biggest things that plagued him at Notre Dame, is that the point that he questioned himself about, what do I do? How do I finish a run? Do I finish it off or do I take a slide? And you can't go trying to do both, because that's how you get injured. So he's got to get past that, and he's got to figure out, is he going to be able to be a mobile quarterback and succeed? Or is it going to be, he's going to be a running quarterback and succeed? I think he's got to struggle between the two. I think he wants to do both. And I don't think that's in his catalog of activities.
Well, kind of moving on from Wimbush to our last subject, I believe, he left behind Ian Book, who was the starter this year. Obviously, Book didn't play as well in the playoff. Now, given he was playing against Clemson, arguably the best team in college we've seen probably over the last 20 to 30 years, in my opinion. I mean, that team was just unbelievable. But back to Book, do you think there's any chance we see a quarterback controversy between Phil, the sophomore, and Ian Book coming into 2019?
So we're going to go Dracovic Book controversy. I think anybody having to fight for a job is healthy. And I think that it's going to be great to see these two go at it. Personally, Book's going to be one of your captains, or has been named a captain, actually. And I see Book helping Dracovic help and develop along the way. So I'm going to say that your starter is going to be Book, and that Dracovic is going to be the guy that's going to help him out. He's going to bail him out if he gets injured, or come in situations where they need him. They need him, off the bench.
I would agree with you that Book's going to help Dracovic. I think he's going to help them by holding his clipboard on the sideline. I see the sophomore taking the starting job in 2019. I just put it out there on record.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah, I think that as time wears on, Book will give way to Dracovic, and he'll take over. The kid has been hyped up since his commitment to Notre Dame, and even a little bit before. Freakish athlete, good talent. We got to see him a little bit against Florida State, really in just a handoff kind of capacity. But yeah, I think 2019 we see Dracovic take the starting role at some point during the year.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Well, on that bombshell, we want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Irish Rewind. Again, I'm Dalton Tinklenberg. You can find me at sportsmediapass.com. I'm normally covering Notre Dame or the Alliance of American Football, or from time to time the NFL. And George, where can they find you at?
You can find me at shakedownthethundersports.com. And you can find me at the same Shakedown of Thunder Sports on Twitter and on Instagram. And we get our articles out there at least a couple a week talking about the different sports at Notre Dame. And also on Facebook.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for us. We will see you next Monday. And as always, thank you for listening.
Go Irish.